and welcome to the Wormhole Podcast, episode 50. My first milestone, yay! I'm Charlie Place, and joining me once more again, and I'm totally over the moon about this, is the author who brought you Before Ever After, Love and Gravity and A Dream of Trees, talking with me today about last year's The Beginning of Always. Hello again, Sam Sotto.
Hi, Charlie. It's great to be here again. I didn't realize this was your 50th episode, so congratulations.
Thank you very much. How are you?
Great. Well, as good as can be in the world's longest lockdown, so trying my best to keep sane.
And, I am very glad to have you back. And we've got a very different book to talk about today. Well, it's still a Sam Sotto book, but it's quite different. Sure. So we're talking about The Beginning of Always. The proceeds from this book's sales went to help those affected by the pandemic.
That's right, frontliners, because I released this book as the pandemic started, and I felt it was the least I could do to help with the frontliners who were doing everything for us. And I hope that in my own little way, I could contribute to helping them out.
Yeah, brilliant. You say you guys are in lockdown. How are you guys doing in the pandemic in the Philippines?
Well, fortunately, our cases are going down. There's a good trend. However, we're still playing catch up with the vaccinations. I think we're one of the lowest in the world still, the opposite of the UK. So I think our levels are at less than 30% with a double dose. Where I live, the figures are higher because we're in an urban area. So in our region, it's about 70%. But if you look at the total country, we're still below 30%. So we're still really not in a good place as far as vaccinations are concerned. And yeah, my kids have been in online school since the beginning of the pandemic.
Oh gosh, yeah.
So yeah, I know. The funny thing is, the last time they went to school, they had no idea that was going to be their last day of school. We had, in fact, just flown in from New York because my daughter had a school trip for Model UN. This was February last year. And the minute we landed, that's when lockdown started. And so since that time, they have not set foot outside of the house except to get their vaccinations.
Gosh, yeah.
Yeah. My daughter has only been out for doctor's checkups, the dentist, things like that. But at least now they've started vaccinating children. She's gotten her first dose. So we're hoping, things get back to normal, at least next school year. They're talking about hybrid classes where at least you get to go to school, a couple of days a week.
Mm-hmm. I hope the lockdown does prove to be good and the vaccine rates go up and everything like that.
Thank you. I hope so too.
You've mentioned your daughter. The Beginning of Always, she's designed the cover.
Oh, yes. She's our resident graphic designer here. She likes to design things. And so she did that because she knew that I wanted to donate the proceeds of the book. She considered that as her contribution to the project.
Oh, wonderful. Did she also do the book cover for A Dream of Trees?
Yes, that's right. So they're my favorite book covers for obvious reasons.
Yeah, no, understandable. I didn't actually know that about A Dream of Trees at the time, I don't think, but it was lovely to read about it. So The Beginning of Always looks at a fantastical answer to the mystery of the unknown woman of the Seine, whose body was found in Paris in the late 1800s, and her beauty captivated someone so much that they based the first aid training dummy doll, Resusci Annie, on her. That's where the woman fits into our modern day, and we're going to discuss a lot in a moment. I'm just kind of glad that no one told my Girl Guide pack the history of that while we were learning first aid. So, Sam, can you tell us about this mysterious woman and how you came to write about her?
Okay. Well, I was just surfing the net as I usually do. And, those things that just pop up on the side of your screen, usually clickbait articles, and like they have some fantastical title and things like that. So I just saw this thing, which I thought was a clickbait, and it said, "The most kissed woman in the world." And of course, I had to click on it. And when I did, that's when I found out all about the unknown woman of the Seine and about this death mask that had been made of her face and that had gained so much recognition because it was unlike other death masks of drowned people. because she looks so at peace, at her time of death. And that created so many myths and stories about her. And I felt like, oh, that's an interesting story, especially since there was no definitive answer to who she was, why she wound up in the Seine, and all of that. And I figured I could make a story out of this. And that's what I did. So it was really by accident. It was just something that popped into my screen. And I said, oh, okay, what's this about?
That's got to be the most successful clickbait ever.
Yeah.
So you started writing this book years ago, I read.
Yeah, it's been a long time. I mean, I would go back to it now and then, write other books. Like A Dream of Trees came after it, right? So it's had a lot of incarnations, and I finally got the pieces to work together and finish it during the pandemic. I suppose we all had a lot of time on our hands, and I figured, it wasn't by accident that it was in a shape and form that I was happy with, and it came, at this time. So I felt that it had to serve a purpose. And that's where I got the idea of donating the proceeds to frontliners.
So do you think this is perhaps the most important book to you of your books?
In that way, yes, definitely, because it's contributed, I feel, it's helped actual people. So in that way, it's had the most impact, I suppose. So yeah, I'm pretty proud of the book and what it's been able to do.
Mm-hmm. So if we talk more about the Unknown Woman of the Seine, from your research, what do you think happened to her? Because I've read there's the possibility that she had TB, she could have drowned. What do you think happened?
The only story that I entertain as an answer to that is the story that I wrote. So in my mind, that's what happened. That's exactly what happened to her. So I don't entertain any other theories. So it's canon now.
There's a lot of fantasy to your story then, Sam.
Yes.
It works as fiction.
Yeah. And I think the others had elements, of course, of fantasy. I mean, with Before Ever After, you have an immortal man. With Love and Gravity, you have a time-traveling Isaac Newton. And A Dream of Trees, of course, you have that element of life after death. But here, yes, I do introduce another type of fantasy where we have the idea of reincarnation and the idea of the breath of life as an idea. Yeah, I had fun playing around with those concepts.
Well, yeah, you say about, if we say this book is specifically more about reincarnation, the other ones are about time, although it's got time in it. What is important to you about reincarnation and immortality and things like that? Why is this an important theme for you in your work?
Well, I think that you're able to explore the importance of choice. I think in any of my books, that's a recurring theme, how our choices affect the course of our life. And if you set that in an immortal man's life, how would these choices affect him? And in this case, if you had your life to live over, again, how would these choices affect these lives that you live? So for me, it's more the idea of choice. And I feel that that's something that, whether you're immortal or not, that's really the common thing in our lives. We're all confronted with little choices, big choices. And I feel that those are the things that ultimately take us from one point to the next. And for me, it's like a playground when I can play around with this, when I can put choice in different contexts and see where that will take the characters.
So I kind of want to ask, has there ever been a point in your life where choice became very important to you? What does this stem from?
I feel that my life has taken a lot of, it's not a straight path. And it's something that you can only appreciate looking back. Like, for example, my career as an author, that wasn't something I ever planned on. It's been, almost like a detour. And I feel that has happened because all the little choices, some I was conscious of, some I was unconscious of, they only made sense after the fact. So, for example, I set out to have a career in marketing, and that's what I did. I worked for companies like Unilever and Johnson and Johnson, Procter and Gamble. And the last thing on my mind then was to have a career in writing books. But through the twists and turns of life and the choices I made, I feel that reflecting on the choices that I've made and how it's taken me to this place, I guess that's where the fascination with choice comes from. Sorry, that's my dog. He's made another guest appearance. I thought I was going to get lucky this time around, but Alfie, can you be quiet?
That's all right. Hello, Alfie. So we should probably go back to the plot. This book has a lot of ew elements, and none of them are of your making. I thought the part with the Paris Morgue, the story about the Paris Morgue, and I read it and thought, oh my goodness, I kind of hope she's made this up. But I thought at the same time, I bet she hasn't. No, this is so, it's got to be real. Can you tell us about the Paris Morgue and what you found out about it?
Yeah, I researched all about the Paris Morgue, and all those ew elements are actually real. And I was just fascinated by it because I had never read anything like that before. I had never had any reason to research on morgues and such. And I just found that part of history really interesting. And I thought it added a lot of color and authenticity to the book because, as I said, like before, Ever After, even Love and Gravity, the more fantastic the premise of the book is, the more I want it to be grounded in fact, so that the readers have something to latch on to when I ask them to take that leap with me and believe in reincarnation and believe in last breaths and things like that. So I felt the historical part of the book really had to be on point, and fleshing out the Paris Morgue was a big part of that because it was a critical part of the book.
Well, yeah, I know I read it. And of course, we've heard about freak shows and things like that, that just for anyone who hasn't read the book, we should say that this was where the people working at the morgue would get bodies ready for display and people would come in the morgue and just have a look. And it was a tourist attraction.
It was actually listed in the tourist attractions of the city at that time. So I guess they had to be pretty bored to go to the morgue for fun.
Yeah. Well, it's actually one thing I usually research the heck out of books, but this is one thing that I didn't look up too much because I didn't want to see any photographs, I have to say.
I can understand.
Yeah. Move on to completely different subjects again here. So we've got these two characters, the main characters of the book. We've got Thomas and we've got Elise. And, they're wonderful. They're finding out the mystery. They're going through their own issues where they've had a near-death experience, a near-drowning experience, and they've worked out it's okay, they're alive, and now they're trying to work out how mysteries come together and what their role is in this history and everything. So you've got Elise, who obviously signifies the woman in the Seine.
Yes.
And then you've brought Thomas into this, that obviously there isn't necessarily a character for him in history. What was important about making a couple and bringing their story to life?
I wanted a couple that made sense together. Maybe on the surface, they would be different. They would have some friction, initial friction, nothing instant, really, if you look at it. But as they got to know each other, I wanted the reader to see that, oh yeah, they make sense together. This couple, they complement each other. They help each other grow. They teach each other new things. So Elise, in this case, came first. And then I tried to develop a match for her that would be a good foil to her character and somebody that the readers could, root for, as well as the mystery and as their journey through this history and across Europe progressed.
And Thomas lives with what he says is effectively a heart condition, and he's dying from it. But he effectively isn't at the same time. Where did this idea of using this to symbolize things come from?
Well, I wanted it almost, it's hard to talk about this without spoiling the book, but I wanted it to be almost like bookends to the book, right? Like the root of the mystery, what actually happened to the unknown woman of the Seine, And I wanted it to almost like flip it around so that their roles would be reversed, like who was saving whom. So I needed to give Thomas a condition wherein, there would be this sense of urgency that Elise would be the one this time around to be the one trying to save him.
Well, on this note, and I have said about try not to spoil the book, but I do have a couple of spoiler questions. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Listeners are used to me darting here, there, and everywhere. We're going to dart to the ending a moment.
Okay.
I was flabbergasted by the end of Thomas's storyline. I thought you were going to have him and Elise. They were going to break the spell. It was all going to be great. I obviously also interpreted the title of the book completely wrong. Could your story have been told with Thomas staying alive at the end?
I considered that, but I felt that his sacrifice was more meaningful and that things would be set right if this had to happen to him for things to work out ultimately in the end when they were reincarnated again. There had to be this resolution where he would be able to do what he wanted for Elise, and Elise would be able to accept what he did for her. Yeah, so I felt that there was really no other way to do it, although I was really tempted to. I felt bad writing that scene, but I felt that it was just, necessary.
And then you've got this... So your characters break the spell, but they aren't the couple that get to live happily. You've got another couple in the journey, so to speak, who are able to be together, and we get to see a little bit of their lives at the end.
Yes.
Do you think you could ever have successfully included this next couple more, or did they always have to be at the end and a bit vague?
I felt that by being vague, readers could fill in the blanks and their story could live on longer in their heads versus giving an ending that just spelled it out. My ending, right? He doesn't like it at all. But for me, I feel that this way, the reader has a freedom to imagine what could be. And that's how I like the stories I read to be as well. The characters live longer in my head that way.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And we've heard from either your ally or your strongest critic. I don't know which he is at the moment, but you've certainly got an editor in waiting there if you need another editor.
I know, right? He clearly does not agree with my approach.
We have spoken about time and you said reincarnation. And of course, you have got here a lot about love itself specifically. And this is, again, something that you've had since the beginning. But I think it's been a lot deeper, I suppose you could say, a lot more specific in the beginning of Always. Mm-hmm. Why is it important to you to explore love and everything that comes into it?
I think it's because it's such a universal thing, it's something that travels well. It's something that readers can relate to. It's something that I'm interested in reading. So when I write books that I like to read. So for me, exploring love doesn't get old. There's always a new dimension to it because every time it's experienced by different characters, then it's a different experience for me also bringing that type of love to life. So I feel that it's something that, you could just explore endlessly because you'll always find new dimensions to it. And the people who read it will also find something new in it because of the backdrop of the story, because of the characters involved, the plot, and things like that. There's always something new about love, even though it seems to be the most told tale in the world. Yeah, I just keep on getting drawn back into it because it's such a rich thing to mine.
Well, you've got the other characters in the book, such as Drina and Henri. Mm-hmm. To some extent, that's a different kind of love. Drina is a romantic love that you're looking at. Right. Henri is more his daughter.
That's right.
And he's the person at the morgue. Is this where these extra characters come from? Is this where they come into it? They're important to the love theme as such?
Yes. Apart from being part of the mystery, of course, they move the mystery. They help unravel the mystery. But yeah, I do like to explore relationships of different characters because that's really one of the ways to make a character real, when you see how they interact and how they feel about the other characters in the book. It's not a cookie cutter thing where it's just a one dimensional romance, because, like life, we have different relationships with different people. So I feel that that's another way to make the book feel more authentic.
You also seem to carry this over with the locations. You go to lots of different locations in Europe, as you have in your other books.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the thing that kind of got me thinking about this was when they go to Hungary and they go to the river where there are the monument of shoes.
Right.
Where you choose the different locations, was this important in terms of what you're trying to say with the book?
Yes, definitely. I feel that the locations I choose where I set the story, I feel that those places have to evoke the kind of mood that I'm trying to create in that moment, and then sort of echo what's going on in the characters' heads. So I feel that the setting is almost another character in the book. It's something that the characters interact with. They respond to their settings. I always feel excited when I find the perfect setting to put them in. When I find that, I think, aha, yes, this will definitely flesh the whole scene out. It's a more immersive experience, I feel. So yeah, in that particular scene, I thought, oh, it's kind of depressing. The scene is pretty depressing, but at the same time, I felt that's exactly what, for the dialogue that was going on there, the thoughts that were going on in their mind, I thought it was just the perfect place to put Thomas and Elise for that particular conversation.
Well, humor me with a question that's just come to my mind. We often talk about buildings and houses being a character, and you said about location being a character, which isn't something you hear so much. Would you say then that all your different locations are maybe different characters, or is location as a one big umbrella topic, is that one character in itself?
I feel that the different locations, I guess it depends on the book, right? But in this particular case, the locations are pretty different from each other, and they have a direct tie to, what's going on both in the present time and in the past. So yes, each location that they travel to, I think of as that third character that they're interacting with in that story. The main characters are interacting with in that particular chapter, let's say.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. May I ask you, what do you think happens after death? If that's okay to ask.
Sure. Yeah, interesting question. Well, I do believe in life after death. I choose to believe it, not because I have any proof of it. And it's not even a faith thing. I just feel that the alternative would render everything meaningless. I feel that there's got to be more. The journey just can't end here. I feel that we're more than just our bodies. So whatever is animating us can't just end when our bodies do. So I choose to believe that there is something waiting for us after all of this, after our time on Earth. What that is, actually, it's an evolving thing for me. I was raised a Catholic. So, of course, there's that usual Catholic imagery that comes with heaven and such. But as I've gotten older and my journey in faith is continuing, I can't really say that I have this one image in my head. But all I know is that it's probably a place where we will be at peace, where we will find answers to questions probably that we've been carrying around with us in this life. So yeah, a better place waiting for us at the end.
Well, you said about your Catholicism there, and I was raised a Catholic as well. So if I may ask, we won't get too much into religion, but
sure. No problem.
Is there a place for kind of the idea of purgatory in your book, do you think?
Purgatory. I feel that that's almost like a state of mind, like what they're going through now, the characters, where there is no resolution. So even if they aren't dead, the idea that they still have these issues to resolve, otherwise they will have to keep on repeating, the same circumstances, that is some sort of purgatory. So in that sense, yes, but not the purgatory that traditionally is talked about in Catholicism, where it happens before you get to heaven, like after you die and before you get to heaven. This one is almost like it's a state of mind.
Mm-hmm. We'll move away from the religion. Something different again. Elise is a blogger. She covers events, which, a blogger, so I love that bit. And you've included short blog posts throughout the story.
Yes.
Why was Elise a blogger?
Well, I like to live vicariously through my characters, and that's always a career that has fascinated me. I always thought, if I wasn't doing this, or if I hadn't done my marketing thing, I would have wanted to be some kind of travel host, something like that. And so for me, the modern day incarnation of what I wanted to be back then, as a travel host, would be Elise's career, where she gets to experience all of these different places and different events and write about it. So so that was just me living vicariously through her.
Well, I remember thinking about your research, obviously, particularly Before Ever After, where you've got the European road trip, and thinking you must have lots and lots of photos. And of course, Instagram has come up and it's enabled more stuff there.
Yeah.
But do you think you'd ever maybe write, maybe even like a non-fiction book or photo journal or something like that?
Well, the photographer in the family is actually my husband. I mean, he's not a professional photographer, but he's the one who really takes photos. So it'll probably be his book, not mine. I just post in the pics and take selfies, but I don't think my talent lies in photography. But maybe I could encourage him to pursue that, because he has really good photos of all our trips. We have them around the house. He's really good. He has a real eye for that.
You could kind of be the contributor with captions by Samantha Sotto or something.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah.
Edited by Alfie.
And with a very close, happy ending.
Yes. So that fairy tale book that you told me about 2 years ago, set in Scotland, is this still happening?
That I have set aside for a while. It's there, it exists, but I don't know. Sometimes the idea dies before I can flesh it out. And this other book, that I just finished kind of hijacked my brain and, was very selfish in the sense that it didn't let me work on anything else. And I felt that was the story I wanted to tell. So I'm not closing my doors to really polishing up the fairy book, because I did go to Scotland after all. So maybe one day, but I just felt that the last book I wrote was, it just hijacked my brain. So I had no control over what I wanted to write. That makes any sense.
Yeah, no, it does. I had actually wondered when we get to the end of The Beginning of Always and you go to Scotland, I thought, maybe this was the book. Tell us about this book that you have finished.
This one, I would say, is completely fantasy now. I mean, I have departed from any sort of history. So it's almost another genre, I would say. But I felt that it was the book that I wanted to write while on lockdown, I guess. It was very freeing in that sense because, when you're cooped up and things like that, I just wanted my mind to be free to go and do whatever it wanted to do. So this book is set in an alternative Japan. Yeah, so quite a departure because all my other books, 3 of the 4, have been in Europe. So this one is more in my neck of the woods. And I don't know how it came to be, why it went that direction. I guess it was really just a reaction to the quarantine, the pandemic, and everything happened. I just wanted to be in another world altogether. And so I created that world that I wanted to be in. And yeah, that's how it started. So it's an alternate Japan. And the characters, one is from that world and one is from this world. And they cross over because the connection between the 2 worlds is actually just right behind a ramen restaurant's door in Tokyo. So the concept is also about choice. It's a pawn shop. Like if you open the ramen restaurant's door, behind it is this pawn shop that sometimes is there and sometimes isn't. It depends on who walks through that door. And that pawn shop, instead of trading in the usual pawn shop goods, they actually trade choices. So people from our world, if you have a choice or a regret that you've made and you want to rid yourself of it, the pawn shop will take that and exchange it for something else.
That's quite a deep topic then that you've looked at.
Yes. And I would say it was such a fun and liberating thing to write. One, because I didn't have to do any research. I mean, I am a nerd and I love research, but this one I wanted a break and just go where my imagination would let me. I was really free to create the world that I wanted behind that ramen restaurant's door. And it was so refreshing, especially during lockdown. Like, usually at that time of the year, I would be in Japan traveling with my family because you go once or twice a year. Every year, it's almost like a pilgrimage because it's so close to us and it's one of our favorite places to go to. So that was basically my Japan trip for that year.
If I may ask more about the genre, you say it's not historical, it's alternative universes. Are we going more towards sci-fi?
Yeah, not sci-fi in the sense of, spaceships and things like that, but more mystical fantasy.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, I had this short discussion with my agent about exploring a pseudonym for it because it's just so different from the other books. So I don't know what the answer to that is yet at this point. But yeah, that's something I'm considering only because, it's just so different. And I just want to manage people's expectations because it might be seen as a too big of a departure from what they're, I mean, like my regular readers might think, oh, where is this coming from? I am used to going on road trips across Europe and, having some history to latch onto as I take this leap of faith into this crazy story. But this is literally from the get-go a very strange story.
So we've had Alfie introduce himself.
Yes.
Can you tell us more about your dogs? You have another dog as well now.
Yes. So we have 3 dogs now. Our eldest is a golden retriever. His name is Tennant, after David Tennant of Doctor Who. And then after Tennant, we got a rescue dog. So his name's Alfie, and he's my critic over here. And then our most recent addition to the family is Wesley, because he's a Husky Labrador mix, and he's really light blonde with blue eyes. So we named him after Wesley in The Princess Bride. And well, he quickly became, he's the youngest, but now he's the largest. He's now the biggest one in the family. So interesting dynamic. He's still a puppy. He's 7 months old. So he's crazy, but he's huge. And he literally sleeps next to me. It's like a co-sleeper, just so I can keep an eye on him. And he just finds his way into the middle of our bed all the time in the middle of the night.
And they're all over your Instagram, so anyone who's interested could go and have a look at them. They're incredibly cute.
I take adorable. More photos of them than I do my kids, my 2-legged kids. I mean, they are my kids too, but my 2-legged kids are Instagram shy, so I just take pictures of my dogs.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Sam, a new question I'm adding to the podcast. Is there anything else that you would like to add to what we have said so far?
No, really, more like it's just a wish for your readers. I know everybody's going through this crazy time right now, and I hope everybody finds some way to cope and that we all hang on to whatever hope we can. And I'm sure that we'll see better days soon.
That's lovely. That's a really lovely way to end the podcast. Sam, it's been lovely having you today. I mean, when we finished a couple of years ago, we put down the phone effectively. It was Skype, but we'll say phone, and finished. And I thought, my goodness, I want her back next week because it was just so fun talking to you. And I love your books. And it has just been wonderful to have you back, discuss this latest book. Thank you so much for coming back.
Thank you for having me, and looking forward to being on this podcast again.
Links to purchase The Beginning of Always are in the episode description. If you have enjoyed today's discussion, do subscribe or follow the podcast on your listening app of choice. It's totally free. The Wormhole Podcast, episode 50, was recorded on the 31st of October and published on the 22nd of November 2021. Music and production by Charlie Place.